The morning rain drummed against the windows of Maple Street Diner, creating tiny rivers that raced down the glass. Sarah Williams wiped her hands on her apron and glanced at the clock above the coffee machine. 7:30 in the morning, and the breakfast rush would start soon. She had been working at this small diner in downtown Chicago for 3 years now, ever since her husband Marcus lost his job at the factory. Sarah was a woman who believed in treating everyone with kindness, no matter what they looked like or how much money they had. Her grandmother had taught her that lesson when she was just a little girl growing up in Alabama. "Baby girl," her grandmother would say, "you never know what someone is going through. A little kindness can change a person's whole day, maybe even their whole life." The bell above the front door chimed, and Sarah looked up to see old Mrs. Henderson shuffling in with her walker. She was one of the regular customers, always ordering the same thing: scrambled eggs, wheat toast, and black coffee. Sarah smiled and waved from behind the counter. "Good morning, Mrs. Henderson. Your usual table is ready for you." Mrs. Henderson smiled back, her wrinkled face lighting up. "Thank you, dear. You're always so thoughtful." As Mrs. Henderson made her way to her favorite booth by the window, the bell chimed again. This time, a man entered who Sarah had never seen before. He was probably in his 60s, with gray hair that looked like it hadn't been combed in days. His clothes were old and worn, a faded blue jacket with patches on the elbows, pants that had seen better days, and shoes that were coming apart at the seams. He carried a small backpack that looked like it held everything he owned. The man stood by the door for a moment, looking around nervously. His eyes were kind but tired, like someone who had been through a lot of hard times. He seemed unsure whether he should stay or leave. Sarah noticed him hesitating and walked over with a warm smile. "Good morning, sir. Would you like a table? Or maybe you'd prefer to sit at the counter?" The man looked surprised that someone was being nice to him. "Oh, well." He fumbled in his pockets and pulled out a few crumpled dollar bills and some loose change. "I was wondering, how much is your cheapest breakfast?" Sarah could see he was counting his money carefully, trying to figure out if he had enough. She glanced at the menu on the wall. The cheapest breakfast was scrambled eggs with toast for $6.50. The man had maybe $4 in his hand. "Why don't you have a seat right here at the counter?" Sarah said, gesturing to a stool near where she was standing. "I'll get you some coffee while you look at the menu." The man sat down slowly, placing his backpack on the floor beside him. Sarah poured him a cup of fresh coffee and set it down in front of him. He wrapped his hands around the warm mug like it was the most precious thing in the world. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You're very kind. What's your name?" Sarah asked as she wiped down the counter. "Robert," he replied. "Robert Chun. And you are?" "I'm Sarah. Nice to meet you, Mr. Chun." She noticed his accent was different, like he might have come from another country originally. "Are you new to Chicago?" Robert nodded. "I've been traveling for a while now, just trying to find work and a place to stay." He took a sip of his coffee and closed his eyes for a moment, as if savoring the warmth. "This is really good coffee." Sarah studied his face. There was something about this man that touched her heart. Maybe it was the way he was so grateful for just a simple cup of coffee, or maybe it was the sadness in his eyes that he was trying to hide. She had seen that look before. It was the same look her own father had when he lost his job and couldn't find another one. "Are you hungry, Mr. Chun?" she asked gently. Robert looked down at the money in his hand again. "I am, but I'm not sure I have enough for a full meal. Maybe just toast." Sarah's heart broke a little. She had seen many people come through the diner who were struggling, but there was something special about this man. He wasn't asking for a handout or making a scene. He was just quietly trying to figure out how to afford a simple meal. The breakfast rush was starting to pick up. A group of construction workers came in, laughing and joking as they sat down at a large table. Two businesswomen in expensive suits took a booth near the back, already talking on their phones while they looked at the menu. A young mother with two small children sat down at a table by the window, trying to keep her kids calm while she ordered. Sarah was busy taking orders and serving food, but she kept glancing back at Robert. He was still sitting at the counter, slowly drinking his coffee and looking at the menu even though she could tell he had already decided he couldn't afford anything except maybe toast. During a brief lull in the morning rush, Sarah walked back over to him. "Have you decided what you'd like to eat?" Robert looked up at her with those tired but kind eyes. "Could I just have 2 pieces of toast, please? And Maybe some butter if that's not too much extra? Sarah felt a lump in her throat. This man was asking for the simplest thing on the menu, and he was worried about the cost of butter. She made a decision that would change both of their lives, though she didn't know it at the time. You know what, Mr. Chin? It's a slow morning, and we made too much food in the kitchen. How about I bring you our breakfast special, scrambled eggs, bacon, hash browns, and toast? It would just go to waste otherwise. Robert's eyes widened. Oh no, I couldn't accept that. I only have enough money for toast. Don't worry about it, Sarah said with a smile. Consider it a welcome to Chicago breakfast. Everyone deserves a good meal to start their day. Before Robert could protest further, Sarah went to the kitchen and prepared a plate piled high with food. She brought it back to him along with fresh coffee and set it down in front of him. I really can't accept this, Robert said. But his voice was shaking a little. When was the last time you had a good meal? Sarah asked gently. Robert was quiet for a moment. It's been a while, he admitted. Then, please, eat. You're doing me a favor by helping us not waste food. Robert looked at the plate of food, then back at Sarah. His eyes filled with tears that he quickly wiped away. Thank you, he whispered. You don't know how much this means to me. As Robert ate, Sarah continued working but kept an eye on him. She noticed how he ate slowly, savoring every bite like it was a feast. He was careful not to spill anything and used his napkin properly. Despite his worn clothes and tired appearance, there was something dignified about the way he carried himself. The other customers in the diner were busy with their own conversations and meals. The construction workers were talking about their latest job. The businesswomen were discussing some important meeting. The young mother was trying to convince her kids to eat their pancakes. Nobody paid much attention to the quiet man at the counter except Sarah. When Robert finished eating, he carefully counted out his money and left what he had on the counter. This is all I have, he said. I know it's not enough, but Sarah pushed the money back toward him. Keep it, Mr. Chun. You'll need it more than we do. I have to pay something, Robert insisted. I can't just take charity. Sarah thought for a moment. Okay, how about this? You can pay me back someday when you're back on your feet. Consider it a loan, not charity. Robert smiled for the first time since he had entered the diner. It completely changed his face, making him look younger and less tired. You have a deal, Miss Sarah? Someday, I will pay you back with interest. They shook hands across the counter. Robert's handshake was firm and confident, not what Sarah expected from someone who seemed so down on his luck. Where are you staying, if you don't mind me asking? Sarah said. Robert's smile faded a little. I've been staying at the homeless shelter on Madison Street. It's only for a few nights, though. Then, I'll have to figure something else out. Sarah's heart ached for this man. She had grown up poor and knew what it was like to worry about having a roof over your head. Are you looking for work? I am, Robert said. I'll take any honest job. I'm not afraid of hard work. What kind of work did you do before? Sarah asked. Robert was quiet for a moment, like he was thinking about how to answer. I worked in business for many years. International trade, mostly. But that was a long time ago, in a different life. There was something in the way he said it that made Sarah think there was more to his story, but she didn't want to pry. Everyone had a right to their privacy, and she could tell this man had been through something difficult. Well, I'll keep my ears open, Sarah said. If I hear about any job openings, I'll let you know. Do you have a phone number where I can reach you? Robert shook his head. No phone. But I come into the city center every day to look for work. Maybe I could stop by here sometime, if that would be okay. Of course, Sarah said quickly. You're welcome here anytime. And if you're hungry again and short on money, don't be too proud to ask. We all need help sometimes. Robert stood up and put on his worn jacket. He picked up his backpack and turned to face Sarah. Miss Sarah, I want you to know that your kindness today has given me something I had almost lost. What's that? Sarah asked. Hope, Robert said simply. You've reminded me that there are still good people in this world. As Robert walked toward the door, Sarah called out to him. Mr. Chun, take care of yourself out there. He turned back and smiled. I will. And thank you again for everything. I meant what I said about paying you back someday. After Robert left, Sarah went back to her work, but she couldn't stop thinking about him. There had been something different about that man, something that didn't quite match his appearance. The way he spoke, his manners, even his handshake, everything suggested he hadn't always been homeless and poor. Her coworker, Jenny, came over during a break. I saw you give that homeless guy free food. You know Tony doesn't like it when we do that. Tony was their boss, the owner of the diner. He was a good man, but he ran a business and had to watch every penny. What Tony doesn't know won't hurt him, Sarah said. Besides, it was just one meal. You're too soft-hearted, Sarah, Jenny said. But she was smiling. That's why everyone loves you. But you can't save every person who walks through that door. Sarah knew Jenny was probably right, but she couldn't help herself. Her grandmother's words echoed in her mind. You never know what someone is going through. She had a feeling that Robert Chun was going through something big, and if her kindness could help even a little bit, it was worth it. The rest of the day passed normally. Sarah served customers, cleaned tables, and refilled coffee cups. But every time the bell above the door chimed, she looked up hoping to see Robert again. She found herself wondering where he would sleep that night, and whether he would have another meal before the day was over. When her shift ended at 3 o'clock, Sarah walked to the bus stop as usual. As she waited for her bus, she noticed a man sitting on a bench across the street. It was Robert, and he was writing something in a small notebook. Even from a distance, she could see his intense concentration as he wrote. Sarah wondered what he was writing about. Maybe he was keeping a diary of his experiences, or perhaps he was writing letters to family members somewhere. She wanted to go over and talk to him, but she didn't want to intrude on his privacy. The bus arrived, and as Sarah climbed aboard, she looked back one more time. Robert was still writing, completely absorbed in whatever he was putting down on paper. Something told her that this wouldn't be the last time she saw him, and she found herself looking forward to their next meeting. As the bus pulled away from the stop, Sarah reflected on her day. 3 days had passed since Robert Chin first walked into Maple Street Diner, and Sarah found herself looking for him
is that
every
everything?
morning.
Yes,
She
sir.
hadn't seen him since that first day, and she was beginning to worry. Chicago could be a dangerous place for someone living on the streets, especially as the weather was getting colder. It was Thursday morning, and the diner was busier than usual. A water pipe had burst in the office building across the street, so all the workers had come to the diner for coffee while they waited for repairs. Sarah was rushing between tables, taking orders and refilling cups, when she heard a familiar voice. "Excuse me, Miss Sarah?" She turned around and saw Robert standing near the counter. He looked different today, cleaner, and his clothes, while still old, appeared to have been recently washed. His hair was combed, and he had shaved. Most importantly, there was something different in his eyes. They still looked tired, but there was a spark there that hadn't been present before. "Mr. Chun," Sarah said, genuinely happy to see him. "How have you been? I was wondering about you." "I've been better. Thank you for asking," Robert replied. "And please, just call me Robert." "Okay, Robert. Are you hungry? I can get you some breakfast." Robert shook his head. "Actually, I came to talk to you about something. Do you have a minute?" Sarah looked around the busy diner. It was the middle of the morning rush, but she could see that Robert had something important to say. "Let me just deliver these orders, and then we can talk." After serving her tables, Sarah came back to where Robert was waiting patiently at the counter. He had ordered a cup of coffee and was sipping it slowly. "What did you want to talk about?" Sarah asked. Robert reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "I wanted to give you this." Sarah unfolded the paper and saw that it was a hand-drawn map of downtown Chicago. Robert had marked several locations with small X's and written notes next to each one. "What is this?" she asked, confused. "It's a map of places that are hiring," Robert explained. "I've been walking around the city for the past 3 days, talking to managers and business owners. Some of these jobs might be good for young people who need work, or for single mothers, or for people who are just starting out." Sarah studied the map more carefully. Robert had marked everything from restaurants to retail stores to office buildings. Next to each location, he had written details about the type of work, the pay range, and the best time to apply. "You made this for me?" Sarah asked. "I made it for you to share with people who need it," Robert said. "I know you see a lot of people in here who are struggling. I thought maybe this could help some of them." Sarah was amazed. Here was a man who was homeless himself, and he had spent 3 days walking around the city gathering information to help other people find work. "This is incredible," she said. "But what about you? Did you find anything for yourself?" Robert's expression became more serious. "Actually, I did. That's the other thing I wanted to tell you. I start a new job on Monday. That's wonderful. Where? It's at a small import business downtown. The owner is an elderly man who needs help with paperwork and customer service. It doesn't pay much, but it's honest work, and he's letting me sleep in a small room above the shop until I can find a proper place to live. Sarah felt genuinely happy for Robert. I'm so glad to hear that. You deserve some good luck. Miss Sarah, Robert said, and his voice became very serious. I need you to understand something. What you did for me the other day, giving me that meal when I couldn't pay for it, that was the turning point for me. I don't understand, Sarah said. Robert looked around to make sure no one was listening, then leaned closer. I had given up, he said quietly. I was ready to give up on everything. I had been walking around this city for weeks, and everyone looked at me like I was invisible, or worse, like I was dangerous. You were the first person to treat me like a human being. Sarah felt tears welling up in her eyes. She had no idea that her simple act of kindness had meant so much to someone. When I left here that day, Robert continued, I felt like maybe I still had some value as a person. It gave me the energy to keep trying, to keep looking for work, to not give up on myself. Robert, I just gave you a meal. You did all the hard work yourself. You gave me much more than a meal, Robert said. You gave me back my dignity. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, both understanding that something important had passed between them. Then, Robert reached into his other pocket and pulled out a small envelope. What's this? Sarah asked. Open it. Inside the envelope was a $20 bill and a handwritten note. The note read, For one breakfast, with gratitude and interest. This is just the beginning. Robert Chun. Robert, you don't need to pay me back, Sarah protested. Yes, I do, Robert said firmly. A man keeps his word. I told you I would pay you back with interest, and I meant it. Sarah looked at the $20. She knew that for someone in Robert's situation, this was probably a lot of money. Are you sure you can afford this? The man who hired me gave me an advance on my salary, Robert explained. I have enough to get by until my first paycheck, and I needed to do this. It was important to me. Sarah folded the bill and put it in her apron pocket. Thank you, Robert. This means a lot to me, too. There's something else, Robert said. I was wondering if you would do me a favor. Of course, if I can. Robert pointed to the map. Would you mind sharing this information with people who come in here looking for work? I know you meet a lot of people in your job, and I thought maybe this could help some of them. Absolutely, Sarah said. This is such a thoughtful thing to do. I'm not the only person in this city who needs help, Robert said. And I learned something from you about how much difference one person can make in someone else's life. Just then, the bell above the door chimed, and a young woman entered the diner. She looked to be in her early 20s, and Sarah could tell immediately that she was nervous and upset. The woman sat down at a table near the back and stared at the menu without really reading it. Excuse me for a minute, Sarah told Robert, and went over to the young woman. Good morning, Sarah said gently. Can I get you some coffee while you look at the menu? The young woman looked up, and Sarah could see that she had been crying. Just coffee, please. I can't really afford anything else right now. Sarah's heart went out to her. This was exactly the kind of situation Robert had been talking about. I'll be right back with that coffee, she said. Sarah poured a cup of coffee and brought it to the table, along with Robert's map. I don't mean to intrude, she said quietly, but a friend of mine put together this list of places that are hiring. If you're looking for work, it might be helpful. The young woman's eyes lit up as she looked at the map. Are these all current job openings? According to my friend, yes. He spent 3 days walking around the city gathering this information. This is amazing, the young woman said. I've been looking for work for 2 weeks, and I didn't know about half of these places. Thank you so much. Sarah glanced back at Robert, who was watching from the counter with a small smile on his face. She could see that he was pleased his map was already helping someone. What's your name? Sarah asked the young woman. Lisa Martinez. I just moved here from Phoenix to help take care of my grandmother, and I need to find a job quickly. Well, Lisa, I hope one of those places works out for you. And if you need a place to sit and fill out applications, you're welcome to stay here as long as you need. You're very kind, Lisa said. I don't know how to thank you. Just pass the kindness along to someone else when you get the chance, Sarah replied. After helping Lisa, Sarah returned to Robert at the counter. You saw that? She asked. I did, Robert said. That felt good. It really did. Robert finished his coffee and stood up. I should go. I have some paperwork to fill out before I start my new job on Monday. Robert, before you leave, can I ask you something? Of course. You never told me what kind of business you worked in before. You said international trade, but that covers a lot of different things. Robert was quiet for a moment, and Sarah could see him thinking about how to answer. I worked for a company that imported goods from Asia, he said finally. Mostly electronics and textiles. I started as a translator and worked my way up to management. What happened? If you don't mind me asking. Robert's expression became sad. The company went through some financial difficulties. There were some legal problems, and a lot of people lost their jobs. I was one of them. That must have been devastating. It was, Robert admitted. I had put everything into that career. When it was gone, I didn't know how to start over. I spent all my savings trying to find another job in the same field, but the business world can be unforgiving when you're older. Sarah could hear the pain in his voice. I'm sorry that happened to you. Thank you. But you know what? Maybe it was meant to happen this way. These past few weeks have taught me things about life that I never learned in all my years in business. Like what? Robert smiled. Like the fact that kindness is more valuable than money. Like the fact that dignity doesn't come from what you own, but from how you treat other people. And like the fact that sometimes you have to lose everything to find out what really matters. Sarah was impressed by Robert's wisdom and positive attitude. Despite everything he had been through, he wasn't bitter or angry. Instead, he seemed to have learned important lessons from his experience. You're a remarkable person, Robert, she said. No more remarkable than you, Robert replied. You work hard every day to support your family, and you still find time and energy to help strangers. That takes strength. How did you know I have a family? Robert smiled. You wear a wedding ring, and there's a photo of 2 children tucked behind your name tag. Plus, you have that look that mothers get when they're worried about providing for their kids. Sarah was surprised that Robert had noticed so much about her. You're very observant. In my old job, I had to pay attention to details, Robert explained. It's a habit that's served me well, even in my current situation. Well, your new boss is lucky to have someone with your skills. I hope so. I'm determined to prove myself and work my way back up, step by step. Robert picked up his backpack and headed toward the door. Thank you again for everything, Miss Sarah. I'll see you soon. Take care of yourself, Robert. And congratulations on the new job. After Robert left, Sarah went back to work with a warm feeling in her heart. She thought about what he had said about kindness being more valuable than money, and about how losing everything had taught him what really mattered. The rest of the morning flew by. Lisa Martinez spent several hours at her table, filling out job applications based on Robert's map. 2 other customers asked about the map when they overheard Lisa talking about it, and Sarah was happy to share copies with them. During her lunch break, Sarah called her husband Marcus to tell him about Robert and his map. Marcus had been struggling to find steady work ever since the factory closed, and Sarah thought some of the information might be helpful for him too. That sounds like a good man, Marcus said after Sarah told him the whole story. It takes character to think about helping other people when you're going through hard times yourself. I keep thinking there's more to his story than he's telling me, Sarah said. The way he talks, the way he carries himself, I don't think he's just some guy who fell on hard times. I think he might have been someone important once. Does it matter? Marcus asked. Sarah thought about that question. I guess not. He's a good person either way. But I'm curious. Well, maybe you'll find out more as you get to know him better. Sounds like he plans to keep in touch. That evening, after Sarah got home from work, she couldn't stop thinking about her conversation with Robert. She kept remembering the look in his eyes when he talked about losing everything, and the way he had spent 3 days walking around the city to help other people find work. She also thought about what he had said about kindness being more valuable than money. Sarah had grown up poor, and money had always been a struggle for her family. But she was beginning to understand what Robert meant. The feeling she got from helping him and seeing him help others was worth more than any amount of money could have given her. As she tucked her 2 children into bed that night, Sarah told 2 weeks had passed since Robert started his new job at the import business, and Sarah hadn't seen him since that Thursday when he brought her the job map. She found herself wondering how he was doing and hoping that his new position was working out well for him. It was a busy Friday afternoon at the diner when Sarah noticed a well-dressed man in an expensive suit standing outside, looking through the window. He seemed to be studying the menu posted by the door, but something about the way he was watching the inside of the restaurant made Sarah feel like he was looking for someone specific. After a few minutes, the man entered and sat down at the counter, just a few stools away from where Robert had sat that first day. Sarah walked over with a coffee pot and a menu. "Good afternoon," she said with her usual warm smile. "Can I start you off with some coffee?" "Please," the man replied. He was probably in his 50s, with silver hair and kind eyes behind expensive glasses. "And could I see a menu?" As Sarah poured his coffee, she noticed that the man kept glancing around the diner like he was looking for someone. "Are you meeting someone here?" she asked politely. "Actually, I'm looking for someone who works here. A waitress named Sarah Williams." Sarah felt a flutter of nervousness. "That's me. Is everything okay?" The man smiled and extended his hand. "My name is David Kim, and I'm a lawyer. I have something very important to discuss with you. Do you have a few minutes to talk?" Sarah's mind raced. Why would a lawyer want to talk to her? Had she done something wrong? Was someone in her family in trouble? "I'm working right now," she said cautiously. "Is this about something serious?" "It's not bad news," David assured her quickly. "In fact, it's quite the opposite. But it is important, and it might take a few minutes to explain." Sarah looked around the diner. It was a slow afternoon, and her coworker Jenny could handle the few customers they had. "Let me just tell my coworker that I'm taking a short break." After speaking with Jenny, Sarah came back to where David was sitting. "What is this about, Mr. Kim?" "It's about a man named Robert Chen. I believe you know him." Sarah felt a wave of relief mixed with curiosity. "Yes, I know Robert. Is he okay? Is he in some kind of trouble?" "He's fine," David said. "In fact, he's better than fine. But before I explain, I need to ask you a few questions. Did Robert ever tell you what kind of work he did before he became homeless?" "He said he worked in international trade, importing goods from Asia. He said he lost his job when the company had financial and legal problems." David nodded. "That's all true, as far as it goes. But it's not the complete story." "What do you mean?" David reached into his briefcase and pulled out a folder. "Miss Williams, Robert Chen wasn't just an employee at that import company. He was the owner and founder of Chun International Trading, one of the largest import-export businesses on the West Coast." Sarah stared at David in disbelief. "That can't be right. Robert was homeless. He couldn't even afford breakfast." "I know it's hard to believe, but it's true. 3 years ago, Robert's company was worth over $200 million. He employed more than 500 people across 3 countries. Sarah felt like the ground was shifting under her feet. "But what happened? How did he end up living on the streets?" David's expression became serious. Robert's business partner, a man he had trusted for 15 years, was embezzling money from the company. When Robert discovered it, his partner had already stolen millions of dollars and had set up the books to make it look like Robert was responsible. "That's terrible," Sarah whispered. "It gets worse. The partner had connections with some very dangerous people, organized crime figures who were using the business to launder money. When Robert tried to expose the truth, his partner framed him for the crimes and threatened to have him killed if he didn't disappear." Sarah could hardly believe what she was hearing. So Robert had to run away from his own life. Exactly. He liquidated what assets he could without drawing attention, paid off as many debts as possible to protect his employees, and then vanished. He's been living under the radar ever since, afraid that if he surfaces, his former partner will make good on his threats. "But why are you telling me this now? Is Robert in danger?" David smiled. "Actually, no. Last week, the FBI finally arrested Robert's former business partner and his criminal associates. It turns out they had been investigating the money laundering operation for 2 years. Robert is completely cleared of all charges, and he's free to reclaim his life." Sarah felt a mix of emotions, relief for Robert, but also confusion about why this lawyer was telling her all this. "I still don't understand why you're here talking to me," she said. "Because Robert asked me to come here. He wanted me to find you and tell you personally what had happened and why he couldn't tell you the truth when you first met him." "He wanted you to tell me?" David nodded. "He said that your kindness to him when he had nothing was the most important thing that happened to him during those dark months." He said you treated him with dignity when the whole world seemed to have turned against him. Sarah felt tears forming in her eyes. I just gave him a meal. Anyone would have done the same thing. I'm afraid that's not true, David said gently. Robert told me that he went into dozens of restaurants and shops during those months. And you were the first person to treat him like a human being instead of a problem to be solved or avoided. Where is Robert now? Sarah asked. He's in California, working with lawyers and accountants to sort out his business affairs. It's going to take months to untangle everything, but he'll eventually recover most of his wealth. David reached back into his briefcase and pulled out an envelope. He asked me to give you this. Sarah opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a letter written in Robert's careful handwriting, along with a check. When Sarah saw the amount on the check, she gasped. $50,000? I can't accept this. Please read the letter first, David said. Sarah unfolded the letter and began to read. Dear Sarah, by the time you read this, Mr. Kim will have told you the truth about who I am and what happened to me. I apologize for not being completely honest with you, but I hope you can understand why I couldn't tell you the whole story when we first met. I want you to know that the kindness you showed me was not just about food or money. When I walked into your diner that morning, I was at the lowest point in my life. I had lost everything I had worked for, I was living on the streets, and I had begun to believe that maybe my former partner was right. Maybe I was worthless and deserved what had happened to me. Then, you smiled at me and treated me like I mattered. You didn't just give me a meal, you gave me back my sense of human dignity. That morning changed everything for me. It reminded me that I was still a person of value, and it gave me the strength to keep going. The check I have included is not payment for the breakfast you gave me. No amount of money could repay that gift. Instead, this is my way of saying thank you for saving my life. I know you have children and that you have struggled financially. I hope this money will make your life a little easier and give you more opportunities to help others the way you helped me. I also have a business proposition for you, if you're interested. I am planning to open a new company, and I need people I can trust, people who understand that success isn't just about making money, but about treating people with respect and kindness. If you would like to discuss this, Mr. Kim has my contact information. Please know that you will always have my gratitude and my friendship. With deep respect and affection, Robert Chun. Sarah wiped tears from her eyes as she finished reading the letter. She couldn't believe that her simple act of kindness had meant so much to someone, or that it had led to this extraordinary situation. This is too much, she said to David. I can't accept $50,000 for buying someone breakfast. Miss Williams, David said seriously, you need to understand something. Robert Chun is worth approximately $300 million now that his assets have been restored. $50,000 is less than he used to spend on a business lunch. To him, this isn't a large amount of money. But, more importantly, he believes you saved his life. How much is a life worth? Sarah stared at the check, her mind reeling. $50,000 would pay off her family's debts, help her children go to college, maybe even allow her and Marcus to buy a house. What kind of business proposition is he talking about? She asked. He wants to start a foundation that helps people who are down on their luck get back on their feet. Not just with money, but with job training, housing assistance, and emotional support. He said your natural ability to connect with people and your understanding of what it's like to struggle would make you perfect to help run it. He wants me to run a foundation? He wants you to help him create something that would give other people the same kind of hope and dignity that you gave him. He's talking about starting with a budget of $10 million. Sarah felt dizzy. Yesterday, she had been a waitress in a small diner, worried about paying rent and buying groceries. Today, a lawyer was telling her that a multi-millionaire wanted her to help run a foundation. This is all happening so fast, she said. I need time to think about this. Of course, David said understandingly. Robert doesn't expect an immediate answer. He just wanted you to know that the opportunity exists and that he values your judgment and your character. David handed her his business card. When you're ready to talk, just call me. Robert is eager to speak with you directly, but he wanted me to explain the situation first so you would understand everything. Mr. Kim, can I ask you something? Certainly. Do you know Robert well? David smiled. I've been his attorney for 10 years. I've seen him build his business from nothing, and I've watched him lose everything and struggle to survive. I can tell you that he's one of the most honorable men I've ever met. What happened to him was a tragedy, but the way he's handled it shows his true character. And he really thinks I could help run a foundation? Miss Williams, Robert told me that in all his years of business, dealing with executives and politicians and wealthy investors, he's never met anyone who understood people the way you do. He said you have a gift for seeing what people need and knowing how to help them. Sarah looked around the diner, at the worn vinyl booths, the old coffee machine, the regular customers who had become like family to her. This place had been her world for 3 years, and the people here depended on her. What about my job here? The people who count on me. That would be entirely up to you, David said. Robert's foundation would need someone full-time eventually, but he understands that you have responsibilities and relationships here. He's a patient man, and he's willing to work around your needs. After David left, Sarah sat alone at the counter, staring at the check and rereading Robert's letter. Jenny came over and sat down beside her. You look like you've seen a ghost, Jenny said. Who was that guy in the suit? Sarah looked at her friend and co-worker, wondering how to explain what had just happened. Jenny, what would you say if I told you that the homeless man I gave breakfast to a few weeks ago is actually a multimillionaire? Jenny laughed. I'd say you've been working too many double shifts and you need a vacation. Sarah showed her the check. Jenny's eyes went wide. Sarah, what is this? Where did this come from? For the next hour, Sarah told Jenny the whole incredible story. By the time she finished, they were both crying. Jenny from amazement, and Sarah from the overwhelming realization that her life was about to change forever. So what are you going to do? Jenny asked. I don't know, Sarah said honestly. Part of me wants to cash this check and quit this job tomorrow. But another part of me is scared. What if this is all too good to be true? What if I'm not smart enough or educated enough to help run a foundation? Sarah Williams, Jenny said firmly, you are the smartest, kindest, most capable person I know. If this Robert guy sees something special in you, then you should trust his judgment. That evening, Sarah went home and told Marcus everything. Her husband listened in amazement as she explained about Robert's true identity and his offer. $50,000, Marcus said, shaking his head. Sarah, do you realize what this means for our family? I know, Sarah said. But it's not just about the money. It's about what Robert wants me to do next. Do you think I could really help run a foundation? Marcus took his wife's hands in his. Sarah, you've been helping people your whole life. You help them at the diner every day. You help our kids with their homework. You help me stay positive when I'm struggling to find work. This would just be doing what you already do, but on a bigger scale. But what about the diner? What about our life here? Our life here will always be here if we want to come back to it, Marcus said. But this opportunity might not come again. If you don't at least try, you'll always wonder what might have been. That night, Sarah lay awake thinking about everything that had happened. She thought about Robert sitting at the diner counter just a few weeks ago, looking defeated and hopeless. She thought about how a simple meal and some kindness had helped him remember his own worth. And she thought about all the other people out there who might need the same kind of help. By morning, Sarah had made her decision. She was going to see Sarah stood at the window of the airplane, watching the clouds pass by below as the plane descended toward Los Angeles. 3 weeks had passed since her conversation with David Kim, and now she was on her way to meet Robert Shin face to face. The whole situation still felt like a dream. After she had called David to arrange the meeting, everything had moved quickly. Robert had sent her a plane ticket and arranged for her to stay at a nice hotel for 3 days so they could discuss the foundation in detail. Sarah had never been on an airplane before, and she had certainly never stayed in a hotel that cost more per night than she usually made in a week. Marcus had encouraged her to take the trip, even though it meant leaving him with the children for the weekend. This is your chance, Sarah, he had said. We'll be fine here. You go see what this is all about. The plane landed at LAX, and Sarah made her way through the airport feeling nervous and excited. Robert had told David he would pick her up personally, and Sarah found herself wondering what he would look like now that he was back in his own world. As she came out of the baggage claim area, she saw a man in a business suit holding a sign with her name on it. But it wasn't Robert. It was a driver who introduced himself as James and told her that Mr. Chun was waiting for her at his office. The drive through Los Angeles was overwhelming for Sarah. She had lived in Chicago her whole life, but LA seemed so much bigger and more glamorous. The driver took her through areas with mansions and fancy shops that looked like something from a movie. Finally, they pulled up in front of a gleaming office building downtown. James escorted Sarah to an elevator that took them up to the 30th floor. When the doors opened, Sarah stepped into an elegant reception area with marble floors and expensive artwork on the walls. Miss Williams, a young woman behind a reception desk, smiled at her. Mr. Chun is waiting for you in his office. Please follow me. As they walked down a hallway lined with windows overlooking the city, Sarah felt more nervous than ever. What was she doing here? She was just a waitress from Chicago. How could she possibly fit into this world? The receptionist stopped at a large wooden door and knocked softly. Mr. Chun, Miss Williams is here. Please send her in, came a familiar voice from inside. Sarah took a deep breath and entered the office. It was enormous, with floor-to-ceiling windows, expensive furniture, and bookcases filled with what looked like important business books. Behind a large desk sat a man in an expensive suit, but when he looked up and smiled, Sarah immediately recognized the kind eyes and gentle expression of the man she had served breakfast to just a few weeks ago. Sarah, Robert said, standing up and walking around his desk with his arms open. Thank you so much for coming. He hugged her warmly, and Sarah felt her nervousness begin to fade. Despite the expensive clothes and impressive office, this was still the same man who had been so grateful for a simple meal. Robert, I can't believe all this, Sarah said, gesturing around the office. David told me you were successful, but I had no idea it was like this. Robert laughed. I know it's a lot to take in. Please, sit down and let me explain everything. They sat in comfortable chairs near the windows, and Robert poured tea from an expensive-looking tea set. Sarah, I want you to know that none of this matters as much as what you did for me that morning in your diner, Robert began. All of this, he gestured around the office, is just business. What you gave me was much more valuable. I still can't believe that buying someone breakfast led to all this, Sarah said. It wasn't just the breakfast, Robert explained. It was the way you treated me. You looked at me and saw a human being who deserved kindness, not a problem to be avoided. Do you know how rare that is? Robert stood up and walked to the window. During the months I was homeless, I learned things about society that I never knew when I was wealthy. I learned that most people's kindness depends on what they think you can do for them. But your kindness was pure. You had no idea who I was or what I might be able to give you in return. Anyone would have done the same thing, Sarah said. No, Sarah, they wouldn't have. I tested that theory in dozens of restaurants and shops. You were the only person who treated me with genuine compassion. Robert returned to his chair and leaned forward. That experience changed me. Before I lost everything, I was successful, but I was also selfish. I thought success was just about making money and building a business. I never really thought about the people around me who were struggling. But you said you employed hundreds of people. That helped them. I paid them, yes. But I didn't really see them as human beings with their own hopes and fears and challenges. I saw them as resources to help me build my company. Robert's expression became serious. When I was on the streets, I met so many people who had fallen through the cracks of society. Good people who had just hit a streak of bad luck, or who had made mistakes and couldn't find a way back. I realized that our society is full of people like that, and most of us just ignore them. Is that why you want to start the foundation? Exactly. I want to create something that gives people what you gave me, not just financial help, but dignity and hope. I want to help people believe in themselves again. Robert opened a folder on the table between them and pulled out several documents. I've been working with lawyers and social workers to develop a plan. The foundation would provide 3 types of help: immediate assistance like food and shelter, job training and placement services, and long-term support to help people rebuild their lives. Sarah looked through the documents. The plans were detailed and comprehensive, covering everything from funding sources to staff requirements to success metrics. This is amazing, she said. But I still don't understand why you think I could help with something this big. Because you understand what people need better than any social worker or business executive I've ever met, Robert said. When you helped me, you didn't just give me food. You gave me respect. You talked to me like a person, not a charity case. That's exactly the approach this foundation needs to take. But I don't have any experience running a foundation. I don't even have a college degree. Robert smiled. Some of the most important things can't be learned in college. You have something much more valuable. You have empathy, you have wisdom, and you have the ability to connect with people who are hurting. He pulled another document from the folder. I've been researching other foundations and charities, and I've noticed a pattern. Most of them are run by people who have never experienced poverty or homelessness themselves. They mean well, but they don't really understand what it feels like to be in desperate need. And you think I do? I know you do. You told me you grew up poor, and I could see in your eyes that you understood exactly what I was going through. That understanding is what would make you perfect for this job. Sarah was quiet for a moment, thinking about everything Robert had said. What exactly would my role be? I would like you to be the director of client services, Robert explained. You would oversee all the programs that directly help people. You would hire and train the staff, develop the policies for how we treat clients, and make sure that everyone who comes to us for help receives the same kind of respect and dignity that you showed me. That sounds like a huge responsibility. It is. But I believe you're ready for it. And you wouldn't be alone. We would start slowly and build the organization gradually. You would have a whole team of social workers, counselors, and administrators to support you. Robert handed her another document. This outlines the salary and benefits package I'm proposing. Sarah looked at the paper and gasped. The salary was more than 10 times what she made at the diner. Robert, this is too much. You're offering to pay me more than some doctors make. Sarah, this foundation is going to help thousands of people over the next few years. If we do it right, it could become a model for other cities across the country. The director of such an important program deserves to be compensated fairly. But what if I fail? What if I'm not good at this? Robert's expression became very serious. Sarah, let me ask you something. When I walked into your diner that morning, looking homeless and desperate, did you hesitate before helping me? No, I just did what felt right. Exactly. You trusted your instincts, and you were right. I'm asking you to trust your instincts again. I believe in you, even if you don't believe in yourself yet. They spent the next several hours going through the details of the foundation. Robert showed her the building he had purchased to house the organization, the plans for different programs, and the team of advisors he had assembled. Sarah was impressed by how thoroughly he had thought everything through. There's one more thing I want to show you, Robert said as the afternoon was winding down. Would you like to take a ride with me? They left the office building and got into Robert's car, a nice sedan, but not as flashy as Sarah had expected. As they drove through the city, Robert explained more about his plans. I don't want this foundation to be just another charity where rich people write checks and feel good about themselves, he said. I want it to be a place where people who need help can come and be treated with the same respect they would receive anywhere else. They pulled up in front of a large, modern building in a nice part of town. This is it, Robert said. This is where the foundation will be located. As they walked through the empty building, Robert described his vision for each space. There would be offices for counselors and social workers, training rooms for job skills programs, a cafeteria where clients could get nutritious meals, and even a small child care center so parents could attend meetings and training sessions. It's going to be beautiful, Sarah said, imagining the building filled with people getting the help they needed. It will be, but only if we do it right. That's why I need you, Sarah. I can provide the money and the business expertise, but I need someone who understands the human side of what we're trying to accomplish. As they walked through the empty spaces, Sarah began to envision herself working here. She imagined greeting clients the same way she greeted customers at the diner, making them feel welcome and valued. She thought about the training programs they could offer, the families they could help get back on their feet, the lives they could change. When would you need an answer? Sarah asked. Take all the time you need, Robert said. But I hope you'll say yes. I think this could be the beginning of something really important. That evening, Robert took Sarah to dinner at a quiet restaurant where they could talk more about the foundation. As they ate, Sarah found herself asking Robert about his own experiences during the months he was homeless. What was the hardest part? She asked. Robert thought for a moment. The loneliness, he said. When you're homeless, people look right through you like you don't exist. You start to wonder if maybe you really don't matter anymore. Is that why my kindness meant so much to you? Partly. But it was also because you saw something in me that I had stopped seeing in myself. You treated me like I had value as a person, not because of what I owned or what I could do for you, but just because I was a human being. Everyone has value, Sarah said simply. Yes, they do. But our society doesn't always act like it 1 year later. Sarah Williams stood in the main lobby of the Chun Williams Foundation, watching as volunteers and staff members prepared for their first annual community celebration. The building that had been empty when Robert first showed it to her was now bustling with activity, filled with the sounds of people working together to help others rebuild their lives. The name Chun Williams Foundation had been Robert's idea. This foundation exists because of your kindness, he had told Sarah when they were deciding what to call it. Your name should be on it too. Sarah had protested at first, but Robert had been insistent. Partners share the credit, he had said simply. The past 12 months had been the most challenging and rewarding year of Sarah's life. After accepting Robert's offer, she had moved her family to Los Angeles, where Marcus had found a good job with a construction company that worked with the foundation to hire people from their job training programs. Their children were thriving in their new schools, and Sarah had discovered talents and abilities she never knew she possessed. Starting the foundation had not been easy. There had been countless meetings with city officials, social workers, and community leaders. Sarah had to learn about budgets, government regulations, and nonprofit management. But through it all, she had kept her grandmother's words in her heart, and she had insisted that every program be built around the principle of treating people with dignity and respect. Miss Sarah? A young man approached her, interrupting her thoughts. It was Marcus Thompson, not her husband, but a 22-year-old who had been one of their first clients. When he had come to the foundation 8 months ago, he was living in his car and struggling with drug addiction. Now he was 6 months clean and working as a peer counselor, helping other young people who were facing similar challenges. Hi, Marcus, Sarah smiled. Are you ready for tonight's celebration? I am, he grinned. I still can't believe how much my life has changed since I walked through those doors. You did the hard work, Sarah reminded him. We just gave you the tools and support you needed. That's exactly what made the difference, Marcus said. At other places, I felt like just another case file. Here, everyone treated me like family. That's what gave me the strength to keep fighting. As Marcus walked away to continue setting up for the evening's event, Sarah reflected on how many similar conversations she had had over the past year. The foundation had helped over 300 people in its first 12 months of operation, and the success stories were beyond anything she had dared to hope for. There was Maria Santos, a single mother of 3 who had lost her job and her apartment. The foundation had provided her with temporary housing, childcare while she attended their job training program, and emotional support during her darkest moments. Maria was now working as an administrative assistant at a law firm and had just signed a lease on her own apartment. There was James Wilson, a military veteran who had struggled with PTSD and homelessness for 2 years after returning from overseas. The foundation's counseling program and job placement services had helped him find both healing and employment. He was now working as a security guard and had reconnected with his family. There was Linda Chun, no relation to Robert, an elderly woman who had fallen behind on her rent after a medical emergency. The foundation had not only helped her with emergency financial assistance, but had connected her with a social worker who helped her navigate the complex world of Medicare and Social Security benefits. Each success story represented a life changed, a family reunited, a person who had found hope again. And Sarah knew that none of it would have happened if she hadn't made the simple decision to be kind to a stranger on that rainy morning over a year ago. Sarah? Robert's voice brought her back to the present. She turned to see him approaching with a familiar figure, David Kim, the lawyer who had first told her about Robert's true identity. David, Sarah hugged him warmly. I'm so glad you could make it tonight. I wouldn't miss it, David smiled. I've been following the foundation's progress, and I'm amazed by what you and Robert have accomplished. We've had a lot of help, Sarah said modestly. The city has been very supportive, and we've been blessed with incredible volunteers and staff members. Don't downplay your role, Robert said seriously. David, You should see Sarah in action. She has a gift for connecting with people that I've never seen before. Our success rate is 3 times higher than the national average for similar programs, and I believe it's because of the culture of respect and dignity that Sarah has created here. As if to prove Robert's point, a woman approached them with tears in her eyes. Sarah recognized her immediately. It was Janet Phillips, one of their first clients who had graduated from the job training program 6 months earlier. "Miss Sarah," Janet said, her voice choked with emotion. "I just had to come tonight to say thank you again. Tomorrow is my 1-year anniversary at my new job, and my supervisor told me today that I'm being promoted to team leader." Sarah hugged Janet tightly. "I'm so proud of you, Janet. You've worked so hard to get where you are. I would never have made it without this place," Janet said. "When I came here, I had lost everything. My job, my house, my confidence. But you and your staff never made me feel like a failure. You helped me remember that I was a person with value and potential." After Janet walked away to join the celebration, David shook his head in amazement. "Sarah, do you realize what you've created here? This isn't just a charity, it's a movement." "What do you mean?" Sarah asked. "Other cities are starting to take notice," Robert explained. "We've had inquiries from mayors and community leaders in Chicago, New York, Atlanta, and Seattle. They want to know how they can replicate what we're doing here." Really, David confirmed. "There's talk about creating a national network of Chun Williams Foundation centers. The model you've developed here could help thousands of people across the country." Sarah felt overwhelmed by the idea. When she had first agreed to help Robert with his foundation, she had thought they would be helping people in their local community. The possibility that their work could spread to other cities was both exciting and intimidating. "Let's focus on tonight," she said. "We can worry about expanding later." The evening's celebration was everything Sarah had hoped it would be. The foundation's clients, staff, volunteers, and community supporters filled the building, sharing food, stories, and hope. There were presentations about the foundation's programs, testimonials from people whose lives had been changed, and recognition for the volunteers who had made it all possible. But the highlight of the evening came when Robert took the stage to speak to the crowd. "A little over a year ago," he began, "I was a broken man who had lost everything. I was living on the streets, convinced that my life had no value and no purpose. Then, I walked into a small diner in Chicago, and a waitress named Sarah Williams showed me kindness that literally saved my life." The crowd applauded, and Sarah felt her cheeks burning with embarrassment as everyone turned to look at her. "Sarah thought she was just giving a hungry man a meal," Robert continued. "But what she really gave me was the reminder that I was still a human being worthy of respect and compassion. That simple act of kindness inspired me to keep going, and eventually led to the creation of this foundation." Robert paused and looked directly at Sarah. "Sarah, you often say that anyone would have done what you did that morning. But the truth is, hardly anyone does. Most people are too busy, too afraid, or too indifferent to reach out to someone who's struggling. You chose to be different, and because of that choice, hundreds of lives have been changed." The applause that followed was thunderous. Sarah stood up reluctantly and waved to the crowd, still amazed that her simple act of kindness had led to something so much bigger than she could have imagined. Later that evening, after the crowd had dispersed and the cleanup was finished, Sarah and Robert sat in her office, reflecting on the day and the year. "Are you happy with your decision to join me?" Robert asked. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Sarah replied. "Robert, I wake up every morning excited to come to work. How many people can say that?" "Not enough," Robert smiled. "And your family? Are they adjusting well to the move?" "Better than I expected. Marcus loves his new job, and the kids are thriving in their schools. We were able to buy a house with the money you gave us, and for the first time in our lives, we're not worried about paying the bills." "That makes me very happy," Robert said. "You know, Sarah, when I was at the lowest point in my life, I couldn't imagine ever being grateful for what had happened to me. But now I am. If I hadn't lost everything, I never would have met you, and this foundation never would have existed." "Do you think everything happens for a reason?" Sarah asked. Robert considered the question. "I think we can find meaning in anything that happens to us, if we choose to look for it. What happened to me was terrible, but it taught me things about compassion and human dignity that I never would have learned otherwise. And It brought us together to do this work. I've been thinking about something, Sarah said. You mentioned that other cities want to start their own Shin Williams Foundation centers. Yes. Are you interested in that possibility? I think I am. But not right away. I want to make sure we have this location running perfectly first. And I want to document everything we do here so that other cities can learn from our successes and our mistakes. Robert nodded approvingly. That's very wise. We don't want to expand too quickly and lose the personal touch that makes this place special. There's something else I want to do, Sarah continued. I want to start a scholarship program for young people who want to go into social work or nonprofit management. I think there are probably other people out there like me, people who have the heart for this work, but lack the formal education or opportunities. I love that idea, Robert said. We could partner with local colleges and universities to create internship programs too. They talked for another hour about their plans for the foundation's future. As the evening wound down, Sarah found herself thinking about the journey that had brought her to this point. 18 months ago, she had been a waitress in a small Chicago diner, struggling to make ends meet, and wondering if she would ever be able to give her children the opportunities they deserved. Now she was the co-founder and director of a foundation that was changing lives and attracting national attention. But, more importantly, she was doing work that felt meaningful and fulfilling. Every day, she got to help people who were going through difficult times, just as she had helped Robert that morning in the diner. The only difference was that now she had the resources and support to help on a much larger scale. Robert, she said as they prepared to leave the office, there's something I want you to know. What's that? That morning when you came into the diner, you thanked me for giving you hope. But you gave me something too. What did I give you? You gave me the chance to discover who I really am and what I'm capable of. Before I met you, I thought I was just a waitress. Now I know that I'm someone who can make a real difference in the world. Robert smiled. Sarah, you were always that person. You just needed the right opportunity to show it. As they walked out of the building together, Sarah looked back at the sign above the entrance. Shin Williams Foundation, restoring hope, rebuilding lives. Tomorrow, she would be back here, meeting with clients, training volunteers, and working to expand their programs. There would be new challenges and new opportunities to help people who had lost their way. But tonight, as she drove home to her family in the house that Robert's generosity had made possible, Sarah Williams felt grateful for the simple act of kindness that had changed everything. Her grandmother had been right. You never do know what someone is going through, and a little kindness really can change a person's whole life. In fact, sometimes it can change many lives, creating ripples of hope and compassion that spread far beyond what anyone could have imagined. Sarah's story was proof that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when they choose to lead with their hearts and treat everyone they meet with dignity and respect. The girl who had learned about kindness from her grandmother in Alabama had become a woman who was teaching that same lesson to people across the country. And it all started with a free breakfast and a warm smile on a rainy morning in Chicago. Believes that the foundation could help change that, one person at a time. As the evening ended, Robert drove Sarah back to her hotel. Whatever you decide, he said, I want you to know that meeting you changed my life. If you decide not to take the job, I'll understand completely. But if you do decide to join me, I think we could do something amazing together. That night, as Sarah lay in her hotel bed looking out at the lights of Los Angeles, she thought about everything she had seen and heard. The opportunity Robert was offering her was beyond anything she had ever dreamed possible. But, more than that, it was a chance to help other people the way she had helped him. She thought about her grandmother's words. You never know what someone is going through. A little kindness can change a person's whole day, maybe even their whole life. With this foundation, Sarah could share that philosophy with hundreds, maybe thousands of people. By the time she fell asleep, Sarah had made her decision. She was going to take the biggest leap of faith of her life. All David Kim, and set up a meeting with Robert. She didn't know exactly what the future would hold, but she knew that sometimes you have to take a leap of faith. As she got ready for work that Friday morning, Sarah looked at herself in the mirror and smiled. Yesterday, she had been Sarah Williams, the waitress at Maple Street Diner. Today, she was still that person, but she was also something more. She was someone who had changed a man's life with kindness and who was about to embark on an adventure she never could have imagined. The girl from Alabama who had learned about kindness from her grandmother was about to discover just how far that kindness could take her. Them about Robert and his map. She wanted them to understand the importance of helping others, even when you don't have much yourself. Mom, her 8-year-old daughter asked, "What will happen to the man now?" "I think he's going to be okay," Sarah said. "He's a strong person, and he has a good heart. Sometimes that's enough to turn your whole life around." Little did Sarah know that her prediction about Robert was more accurate than she could have imagined. And little did she know that her simple act of kindness was about to create ripples that would change many lives, including her own. She had given a stranger a free meal and treated him with kindness, just as her grandmother had taught her. It seemed like such a small thing, but she had a feeling it might turn out to be more important than she realized. Little did Sarah know that her simple act of kindness had just changed the course of both their lives forever. Robert Chun was indeed writing in his notebook, but he wasn't writing a diary or letters. He was making plans, and at the top of the page, he had written one word: remember. Below that, he had written Sarah's name and a promise to himself that he would never forget what she had done for him that day.